Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. This is Craig Telfer speaking, and on this occasion I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Boy George and Odin Carlson of the Terrace get together? That's right, one of us is an acclaimed pop star from the 80s, the other one is a Norwegian model and male escort who's been handcuffed to a wall fixture and beaten with a chain. And while we try to negotiate their release from a flattened shore ditch, we'll have a nice conversation about some lower league Scottish football.
That situation has always puzzled me because Boy George made a number of television appearances after that, and I do think if anything would get you cancelled, it would be locking up an escort against their will and then torturing them. It feels like something you shouldn't get back on, like say reality TV afterwards.
Yes, there's. I mean, I say this day and age, you probably would. You know, I think there's a broad church of people who have been involved in reality television, or who there's a lot of forgiveness to go around. If they're on your side and they do something bad, hey, listen, it's all right. And if Boy George wants to imprison, and effectively that's what it was, imprison a young Norwegian male model and beat him with a chain, then I'm sure there's some people who they quite like the Crying Game, the song that he did from that, and so they're more than happy to be pals with him. But I'm surprised back then. I think it was actually, was it 2008? I think it was that incident happened.
I mean, that's not that long ago. That's a lot of forgiveness to say, I don't know, have him finishing 7th on Celebrity Big Brother or whatever he was after that.
People like controversy, and someone who has chained an escort to a wall fixture and beating them with a chain, they're controversial. They're controversial, so they're going to bring in the ratings, and that's exactly what the makers of Big Brother were thinking of. Although if I was in a room with Boy George, I'd be just eyeing up the door thinking, if he gets between me and the door, there's a good chance I'm going to be changed to a wall fixture and then beaten with a chain.
I would, if I was in that scenario where I was alone in a room with Boy George, I would phone somebody to tell them where I was.
But you're looking around for your phone, and Boy George is like looking for something as he waves the phone at you. Oh. Shaughan and I are going to be reviewing all 4 games that took place in the Scottish Championship this weekend. There's a lot of lower league action, including the Challenge Cup, but these are the only 4 matches that are worth talking about. We'll take a deep dive into Ayr United's win at Raith Rovers, as well as Arbroath's demolition at Queen's Park at Gayfield, and we'll glance over Greenock Morton 1, Partick Thistle 1, and the goalless draw between St Johnstone and Ross County. Before we start, Shaughan, how are you? It's only been a day since we were in one another's company. We were filming A View from the Terrace together, your first appearance of the season. How was it?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Glad to be back. Obviously, it's a kind of new studio, a new setting, but I enjoyed that as well. So yes, was very well yesterday. Still very well. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Really enjoyed yesterday. I thought that don't want to put any spoilers in for the people watching the show, but a lot of hard work had gone into the episode, and I think it will pay off when people see it. I really like the new set. I think it's class. Actually, I think it's the best set that we've had since we began the show back in 2019. I think it really fits the vibe of the show, and the people that make it have put in a lot of hard work to just make the show as good as possible. And I'm still very proud to be involved with it, and still very proud to get the chance to work with you on it.
Yeah, exactly that. I totally echo everything you said. Love being a part of it, and fair play to everybody in front of the cameras and behind it.
And it's just as well because I had to pay £282 to fix a crack that appeared in my bathtub on Tuesday evening. I've got into that habit of showering right before bed. I know that might be quite common. It's not for me. Normally I shower in the first thing in the morning, and I'll go to the gym around lunchtime as well. So I'll take 2 showers a day, sometimes 3 if I'm doing something in the evening. But a lot of the time that I'll just go to my bed. But I'm trying this I think it's Alpecin caffeine shampoo. I'm getting a couple of greys, and I want to stimulate the growth. I don't want to go for just for men. I do want for it to stimulate itself, just to give it a wee helping hand. So I started showering before I go to bed and putting this shampoo on. But on Tuesday, when I was doing that, a crack appeared directly underneath my feet. So the man out there, this big, enormous Welshman, came to fix the bathtub. He did a bloody good job, I think, but it was very expensive. And so that's money that I could sincerely be doing with right now.
So that's not so good. I suppose a couple of things to get some more clarity on. See, in terms of this this shampoo, it sounded like it was to stimulate growth rather than grey hair.
Beg your pardon. Well, imagine I've ordered the wrong stuff. My hair just gets really long, but it's fucking grey. No,
like Stephen Presley.
Like Stephen Presley, aye. Or the guy who chose poorly at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. No, I've got that wrong, Shaughan. It's to stimulate the colouring of your hair back.
Okay.
I don't know what the formula is, but apparently it uses some kind of...
So hair dye? You're dyeing your hair?
No, it's not. I don't want to look like Rudy Giuliani at a press conference outside a garden centre. That's the last thing I want to look like. No, it's supposed to just take on the hair's natural colouring and just stimulate it back without actually being a dye. So that's what we're working with at the moment. I'm not 100% sure it's worked, but I'm determined to finish the bottle and take stock from there. So I'll be washing my hair before I go to bed every night.
Okay, that's fine. That clarifies that. I suppose the other point would be, how on earth did a crack just appear in your bath?
Well, a lot of the time where you've got your bathtub. So I've got my I don't have a shower, but I've got a bath with a shower in it. I mean, so there's a lot of people listening to this will be like, yeah, so do I. Okay, so be vigilant.
So do I.
So do you? Well, there we go then. So you know exactly where I'm coming from. But for some reason, the bath, normally it goes like the bath and then there's something directly underneath it. Well, that bit where I stand underneath the shower, there's a couple of inches of just space and then the floor. So I don't know what had happened, but my weight has just worn it down. I mean, I'm a big fella. You've seen me with no top on, Shaughan. Let's just say I enjoy my greens and then some. And I think that weight has just worn away at the bottom of the bathtub and has led to it just cracking underneath my feet. But it's been repaired. I need to wait 24 hours before I can use it again, which is a bit frustrating. But nevertheless, from Saturday onwards, I can shower knowing that I'm not doing any long-term damage to the infrastructure or to my feet.
And has he padded it underneath as well? Otherwise, the same thing will happen again.
Yes, I've not to touch it. I've been told not to touch it until tomorrow
just
afternoon.
Use the sink.
Yes, funny you should say that, actually, because as soon as the crack appeared, the first thing you do is switch off the shower because you don't want any water. I'm not going to be like, I'll finish what I'm doing, then I'll watch. So basically, I had all this caffeine shampoo in my hair. I had to stick my head under the sink so I could rinse it out. So that wasn't great. But hopefully going forward, we're in a better place, both on the top of my head and the bottom of my feet. Fingers crossed.
God willing.
God willing. Shaughan, we'll kick off this podcast properly by looking at Ayr United's 2-0 win over Raith Rovers at Starks Park on Saturday. Mark McKenzie opened the scoring after 12 minutes with a close-range finish before Jamie Murphy netted from the penalty spot 20 minutes later. Both teams on 14 points. Ayr United are in fourth, Raith Rovers just behind them via goal difference, but the honest men have played one game less and they're on a bit of a tear at the moment. Ayr United, 7 games undefeated in the Championship and back-to-back clean sheets. Shaughan, you were at this match. Give me your thoughts on Raith Rovers 0, Ayr United 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think I thought Ayr United has started the season poorly, but I think actually when you look at their form since the last league game they lost was actually against Raith Rovers.
Yeah,
so I think it might be more accurate to say that they started slowly rather than poorly. They drew a lot of games. However, I thought on Saturday I was impressed by them. They did what they had to do and they could have won by more. I thought actually, oddly, the more substitutions Barry Robson made for Raith, the worse they became. So actually, if anybody was going to get a goal in the second half, it was probably going to be Ayr. The strange thing to say about them though is, I'm not entirely sure how good they are at this moment in time based on Saturday, because Raith just didn't pose any questions whatsoever. Yeah. I suspect that Ayr had other gears to kick into, but it's just that Raith were so inept. All I could say was Ayr done what they needed to do, but I still don't know how good they are, if that makes sense. In terms
that's
of
a good point. I think that's a very good point. I mean, I'm looking at the first goal, for example, and it's the bit where Stuart Bannigan picks up the ball in the centre circle. And when somebody is doing that, you're expecting within his first couple of touches, maybe not his first touch, somebody to be on top of him. And he's able to take a couple of touches, a couple of steps forward and play the ball into, I think it's to Jamie Murphy, who then sets up Marco Roos for the ball over to McKenzie. But the fact that he was allowed unimpeded to dictate things, essentially. That was really poor. And then you talk about the penalty as well for the second goal. Just really, really clumsy from Scott Brown, a player who you should really know better. And I think that's something I noticed throughout the match, just by going by the highlights. And again, outstanding highlights from Raith Rovers. Certainly the just brilliant stuff, consistently brilliant from the Rovers. But that's what I found, that Ayr United had lots of time in the ball in the middle of the park. That was something that I was very apparent just by watching those the snippets of match action there. Yeah,
totally. There was interesting. I think my pal said towards the end of the first half, said this game feels like Raith had somebody sent off in the first 5 minutes, and they've been trying to figure out how to play with a player less. Certainly they were completely outnumbered in the middle of the park. Ross Matthews and Scott Brown absolutely couldn't cope with Ayer's midfield three. And the goal is, I suppose, a perfect example of where Raith have really struggled this season. So as you say, like Dylan Easton is, I think, presumably the most advanced Raith player at that point, and it's played past him. And you could tell he turns round, and I think he's surprised at how much room Stuart Bannigan has. And he's like, oh, now I need to work back here. So he starts to work back. Scott Brown starts to go to his right, but all that does, so he thinks he needs to pick up somebody on his right. So I think he starts to go right, then comes back, but far too late, because Bannigan now has even further to advance into. And it's almost like there's a chain of events where Raith players eventually go to where they should be or what they should be doing, but everybody gets there a bit too late. So every kind of link in the chain is maybe
very good.
It's maybe 30 seconds late. By the time it goes to Mark McKenzie, it might be Fordyce. Everybody has to move across, but everybody moves across too late. Fordyce comes across too late to make a difference. I think it's Fordyce, maybe Hanlon, can't remember. But regardless, that was a good kind of indication and a good example of the kind of confusion around that Raith Rovers performance in general.
Something that Barry Robson said in his post-match interview, he was, a lot of the time when I've watched Robson, I've not seen Raith Rovers for 90 minutes, so I can't really, I can't say I think he's talking rubbish compared to what I've seen myself. But I know that there's times where you have watched a post-match interview and thought, this just isn't consummate with what we've seen. However, this one, I think it's the first time where he's just thought the team were poor all over the pitch. Didn't perform well. Too many players didn't perform well, and I probably tend to agree with him on this one. It seems to be a lot of the time in Barry Robson's time. To me, it's felt like just nothing as a Raith Rovers match, and boop. That's what we've actually seen. Wow, this guy actually feels something.
It was. You're right. I wouldn't agree totally. And the only thing I would disagree about is, as much as he was completely honest and completely bang on about the fact that Raith played poorly, and about the fact that the Ayr United thoroughly deserved their win, which is quite unusual for him. He'll normally make up excuses. He might say against Ross County, he talked about how they had more penalty box entries than Ross County, which I found very embarrassing. So there's none of that kind of statistical gibberish that he could potentially come out with at the end of the game. The only thing I didn't like was he said something about, oh yeah, this is the first time and all the time I've been here where all the players played poorly and none of them carried out, I think he said something like, none of them carried out the plan as they were supposed to. It was something along those lines. And I watching it, that felt like, so it was entirely the players' fault that they lost today. Whereas actually, when I watched it, how that game felt, because bear in mind, I crisscrossed the country 3 times between Thursday and Sunday to watch 2 Scotland games and a Rovers game. In terms of the team that I wanted to win, all of their performances were terrible. And actually, Saturdays felt a wee bit like the Greece game in terms of watching Scotland, where you're half an hour in, you're 60 minutes in, and you're like, I don't really know what the plan is here. It certainly isn't working. I don't understand how we're trying to get from A to B. I don't understand how we're going to score a goal, or even what the plan is to score a goal. And then whereas Scotland eventually managed to turn around, if anything, Raith actually got weaker over the 90 minutes. And I don't think that's entirely on the players' heads that happened. And maybe that wasn't what he was meaning. But I just think there has been an element of confusion around how Robson sets out his stall, whether that's to do with the structure of the Rovers team, whether it's to do with his starting 11, whether it's to do with his substitutes. And I think maybe whatever it was, the first 6 games, say 5 games, they kind of got away with it. Nobody's going to question results if they're going well. But you do start to delve a wee bit deeper when results are going quite poorly. And that's now 1 win in 5 now for Raith.
Wow,
they've slipped out of playoff positions.
I didn't realise their form was as bad as that, man.
Yeah, and now there's a wee bit, far more questions and louder questions about the fact that he's welded to the style of play that seems to actually be regressive on this Rovers squad than actually being a help.
2 questions then. Tell us more about the style, because you've mentioned it previously, so I think it's worth just updating anyone who might have missed that. And 2, you mentioned about the substitutes over the course of the game rather than making the Rovers stronger or reacting to what Ayr United were doing. It actually made you weaker. So you take those in 2 points. What is Robson trying to do, and how did the substitutes affect or not affect the game in this instance?
So it's weird in terms of he plays with wing, but he always plays with wing backs. Fine. So normally maybe something along the lines of a 3-4-3, and without being a big kind of tactics man, I've always thought that what that means is your wing backs are arguably the 2 most important positions in that team. They get forward and they have to defend and essentially provide the width and probably get deliveries into the penalty box for the more forward thinking players. The weird thing in this team is Raith don't use their wing backs as players to get deliveries in the area. It's almost like they're expected to get forward every now and again, but just to be an extra body in the final third, because everything goes so direct. Everything goes so it's, and even though Fordyce can come forward with the ball, even though Docherty can come forward with the ball, they're not asked to do that. It's just launch it forward towards Jack Hamilton and then try and pick up the scraps and maybe try and take advantage of any defensive lapses. So the wing backs almost become almost irrelevant actually in the grand scheme of things, which is a weird thing when you're playing with wing backs. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I know we kind of touched on it as well, but it's probably good to talk about like recruitment as well. Like I don't think there's a joined up thinking here. You bring in Paul McMullen, who's always played as a right winger. We don't play with a right winger. We brought in Ewan Wilson on loan from Motherwell, somebody who played a lot of games for Motherwell last season. He's not a wing back. I think he's a pretty decent left back, but he's now replaced Lewis Stevenson in the team, who hadn't done a lot wrong. He didn't look particularly comfortable over the last, certainly on Saturday and even the game before. So certainly in terms of how he sets up and how he wants to play, I don't think it particularly works. And then actually in terms of, maybe it wasn't the substitutions actually that hindered things, but he actually changed the formation a couple of times during the game as well. And again, at no point did anybody look particularly comfortable. Kai Montague came on actually at half time, which I thought that was interesting. He's a young player who I think could have a decent career. Not necessarily at a high level, but even at championship level. He's definitely has something about him. He's only, I think, 17, 18. So he came on for Paul McMullen at half time. It seems like quite an unusual substitution when you're 2-0 down and really struggling to maybe turn to the bench. You're going to change your formation at half time and then bring on a teenager and hope that he could do something to kind of dig you out a hole. So that didn't work. And then I think within maybe 15, 20 minutes, he changed the system again. And just none of it worked. And you could tell there was a lot of kind of bickering on the park at points as well. And I don't know if the players are necessarily buying into what he wants them to do, I suppose.
Suppose that's it. If I look through the constituent parts, I think there's perhaps, from an outside looking in, there are some deficiencies with that Rovers team. I still think the centre forward, someone who can knit the attack all together. I'm not sure that Jack Hamilton's that man. Paul McMullen's not that man, as you said. He's more of a wide player. But there's still a lot of decent players in that team, and I don't understand why you'd want to go direct when you've got someone like Dylan Easton in the side who is acknowledged as perhaps one of the best players outside the top flight at the moment. If I had a player like Dylan Easton in my team and I was managing them, I would just want to get him in the ball as often as possible. I always just try to find him and try to build a team around him rather than like using the ball, treating it like attaching it to a trebuchet and just getting up the park as quickly as possible. And I suppose though that kind of football is tolerable. I mean, it's means to an end, isn't it? I think that there's more than one way it means to an end. just passing football isn't always the be-all and end-all. Sometimes direct football can be good. But if it's not, and you're not winning as well, which we've seen from the Rovers, then what are we doing here?
It almost feels like, and I don't think there's that much wrong with going direct. And like Livingston was always a team that we discussed in terms of they went direct a few years ago, but still great fun to watch, like really good fun to watch. Whereas with Raith, it almost feels speculative when they're moving the ball forward. And in fact, actually, I think the more I watch this Raith Rovers team, the more I actually think that Barry Robson was telling the truth. When, remember that goal was scored against Morton, and it was just literally a punt forward from Josh Ray. There was a mistake from the centre-half and the goalkeeper.
He said we've been working on it.
And I think that's the only thing they work on in training. They work on nothing else but 70-yard punts forward.
It's one of the things, Shaughan, as well, I noticed from Barry Robson's post-match interview, he said something like, these players are not used to losing a lot. But it's just the way he added a lot in at the end. It's like, no, these players are, they do lose. That's what it says, they do lose. So give them a bit of slack. And as well, the booing at the full-time whistle was a fairly prominent booze that rang out when the whistle went. Is that justified?
I think it's hard because, bear in mind, they went 14 games unbeaten at the end of last season, whatever it was. And when I can't remember where they were in the league when Robson took over, but literally finishing 9th was a concern. They finished, however, it was just outside the top 4. He done well last season. There's no two ways about it. But it's difficult to say that he got the fans buy-in for whatever reason. I don't think they've ever particularly taken to him, partly because the style of play, I suppose, partly because of his post-match interviews. And normally, people don't really care if you're winning games, but it kind of felt like that wasn't quite the case last season. And now this season, you've got this wee kind of dip in form. Might be a blip, but it's certainly a cause for concern. So I wasn't surprised. But bear in mind as well, that's Saturday was the poorest Raith have played during his tenure. I would say it was the worst I've seen them since maybe in a game on TV. It was Neil Collins' last game. It was a 2-1 win at Hampden against Queen's Park, and it was atrocious. It was just before Christmas, and I'm sure he maybe left the next day. I'm sure he went back to America the next day. And it was just a horrible, horrible game of football that Raith somehow managed to eke out a win. That's the worst I've seen them since then. So their worst performance in 10 months. So no, not surprised that there was booing at full time.
And we're talking a lot about Barry Robson there, but what about some of the players then? Because having read stuff in Pie and Bovril just in preparation, just to get a temperature check on what the fans are thinking is going on at Starks Park, players like Scott Brown, Ross Matthews are coming under a bit of criticism. The consensus is that they haven't been playing well over the last wee while. There perhaps needs to be a change up in the middle of the park. Is that right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I get that they have outstanding work rate, but and I think that's what Barry Robson maybe it's what he likes maybe more than what he maybe prizes more than anything else, is kind of work rate. But I think as a fan, you're wanting work rate, effort, and a bit of quality as well.
Yeah.
And as much as Scott Brown and Ross Matthews will do what they can, I think the amount of ground that they have to cover when it's just the two of them is probably unrealistic. I think they're essentially the same player. They just want to do the same thing. Neither of them want to get forward. They are 100 miles per hour type of player. And there was a wee spell there where Shaughan Byrne was brought in as well. Yeah. And as much as he is also a defensive-minded player, he can put his foot on the ball and he can calm everything down. And I thought they looked a lot better with an additional body in there just to help out. And he probably undeservedly has been withdrawn from the team again, and instantly they look poorer. So it's that's supposed. He describes them as I think he calls him his engine or something, but it's definitely it's certainly not a strong point in the team, and really needs looked at as soon as possible.
We'll talk about Ayr United then. I think the player we really need to highlight is Mark McKenzie. Got his 4th goal in 4 matches there. And he's, for someone who has perhaps been, I wouldn't say underappreciated, but someone who has drawn the ire of the Ayr United supporters, a perceived lack of quality. He's actually in really good form at the moment, and he's been played through the middle by Scott Brown and is in probably the best form of his career at the moment. He took his goal very well, a really nice run at the near post there to finish. What did you make of his performance on Saturday?
He was good. He was decent. I thought it was quite funny. Scott Brown, in his interview afterwards, was saying that when I think he said when he first arrived at the club, Mark McKenzie came up to him and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a striker." I thought it was quite funny that in my head I was like, he maybe wanted to get that in early because he just seems to play in every single position, maybe apart from up front in all his time at Ayr United. And to be fair, Scott Brown has played him everywhere, but he's certainly thrived in a more forward-thinking position and has been the fans have been a beneficiary of him moving up top, but certainly he has as well, and then taking advantage of Curtis Main maybe dropped now, George Oakley picked up an injury, Anton Dowd's not quite ready to come back and not quite ready to start 90 minutes, but maybe this is his, at long last, bearing in mind he's 25, maybe he can start to nail down a position, because that's one thing that's hindered him, the fact that he has been a utility player for the first 6 years of his career.
Yeah, it's hard to believe he's 25. He reminds me of that image of Bart Simpson when he's like an adult in the class. He never qualifies from like the fourth grade, and he's just in the classroom full of children. I did quite like as well where Scott Brown, he says like, he told me he's a striker. Like, yeah, so it says I've played him at right back and right centre back. Why would you do that? Is that just for you? See, for your cheek, you're playing at right centre back, as far away from the goal as possible. But it's good to see, I think that sometimes it just takes a bit of luck for a player to find a role in the team. Sometimes it just takes someone else's misfortune for you to be able to step up and get a shot. And that's exactly what's happened here. He took his 2 goals against Airdrieonians very well. Sure, one of them was a diving header, in fact, as well. That was a really nice goal. And it's just nice to see people, someone who's proved people wrong. I think that you'd said that when we discussed him in the past, it's like, we'll never win anything with someone like Mark McKenzie in the team. Whereas I'm looking forward to playing top flight football with Mark McKenzie leading the line. It's funny how things can go their way. But other than McKenzie, was there anyone else who stood out for you?
Who else was good? I mean, Bannigan was an interesting one because I was never his biggest fan. Certainly last season, it felt like he, even though he's not that old, it almost felt like he was getting towards the twilight stages of his career, maybe prematurely, because what is he, maybe 31, maybe 32 now, not sure. And I wondered how good a signing he was for Ayr United. But Brown actually mentioned him afterwards as well, and he did have a good game, albeit I would say he was allowed to have quite a comfortable afternoon, but regardless. But Brown did mention the fact that Bannigan is somebody who he wanted to bring in because for X amount of years he's always finished in the top 4. So I suppose it's that, I don't know, that kind of winning mentality that he wanted to get on board. And he also singled out Bannigan for how good he is just on a day-to-day basis in training. So that was interesting. But another player who I thought on the day, Raith just did not get near him and impressed when it was going into the game. I was like, Bannigan's starting, I can maybe take advantage of that. It was actually quite the opposite.
What about Marco Roos? How was he?
He was, again, a player who, I mean, he done well for the assist. And in fact, actually, now that I think about it, Bannigan might have been involved in the second goal as well. Was it his free kick where Scott Brown? I think it was where Scott Brown done like a rugby tackle. Don't know what was happening at the penalty. So Bannigan was actually involved in the 2 goals. Roos, after his assist was clever. Didn't think he necessarily stuck out as such. But in general, I think from watching their highlights, he seems to be somebody who has still not quite hit the heights from how he started last season. But again, it feels like he is kind of growing into the team again and very much coming onto a game, I suppose. This
current form, do you think this is something that Ayr United can sustain? Can they keep chipping away at that advantage that St Johnstone and Partick Thistle have got over them? Can you see them moving into title contention?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I suppose maybe another player actually I should mention is Kevin Holt. Like, yes. he barely lost a header all day against Jack Hamilton. Just very, very impressive. And I actually wondered about him. I thought it was a good signing. Then they announced what was it, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after they signed him, he was going to have to go in for an operation. I was like, oh, maybe this signing actually isn't going to quite work out for them if he has to have a sustained spell on the sidelines. But no, he was good on Saturday as well. And now you're thinking, well, maybe there is a wee bit of strength and depth in terms of Dow's coming back. Curtis Main came off the bench. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea. Don Thomas came off the bench, which is obviously an interesting one in the fact that he has not had very many minutes this season, but certainly going through their start 11, going through their bench, it's probably compares pretty well to anybody really in the division, with the exception of St Johnstone and maybe to a lesser degree Ross County. But again, maybe not so sure. Maybe Ayr's stronger in that regard. But aye, based on Saturday, based on the players they have available, I don't see why they can't easily have a place in the top 4.
I say that as well. Scott Brown, we've criticised his post-match interviews in the past, particularly when Ayr have lost the game. He's so much better to listen to when his team have won. You know, he seems like really bright and cheery.
I suppose when he's lost, he's not going to unnecessarily throw anybody under the bus, especially his goalkeeper. So maybe that's the difference. But no, you're right.
It's just like that when the team have won, yes, what a result. And when the team have lost, those fucking losers, man. You try fucking Guardiola couldn't get a tune at these cunts. Now we'll head to Angus, where Arbroath took on Queen's Park at Gayfield and turned them over hard and turned them over strong. Gavin Riley, Taylor Stephen and Ryan Dow put the Smokies into an unassailable first half lead, and although Tim Scott pulled one back late on, Finlay Marshall restored Arbroath's 3-goal cushion at the death. This was a very convincing victory. Arbroath find themselves in third place with 15 points. Queen's Park are in ninth with 8. Shaughan, I was at this match, so feel free to ask me questions about it, and then we can just debate backwards and forwards.
I actually thought going into the weekend that this was one of the possibly the most interesting fixture of the weekend, just because I think both teams have earned plaudits this season, and rightly so, maybe for slightly different reasons. In terms of Arbroath, it's performances and results, whereas for Queen's Park it might be more to do with how they've applied themselves rather than the points they've got on the board. However, this I only watched one set of highlights, the Arbroath highlights. I am presuming it was representative, but this looked very much like one-way traffic.
It's not so much one-way traffic. Imagine driving 100 miles down the road with no other cars on it. That's how frictionless this was for Arbroath. Their first half performance, I think it's perhaps the best I've seen from any team so far this season.
Okay.
I thought they were absolutely outstanding in the first half, to the extent where Queen's Park could not get the ball out their own half. You can see that there's moments in the highlights there where Queen's Park they just take a couple of steps over the halfway line and boom, there's a big crunching tackle, like, you are not allowed in here. You do not belong in here. You're not welcome. Go away. And the highlights are very representative of the game. Arbroath were excellent. The first half performance is extraordinary, and the 3 goals, they actually got a couple more. There's Ryan Dow has a flick, I think, that just goes the wrong side of the post, and I think there's someone else, I can't quite remember, is it Taylor Stephen, forces Callum Ferry into a really good low save down at the post. Could easily score both chances. The second half was a bit of a lull, but it was that they had Arbroath who were just happy to see out the rest of the game. To be honest, didn't need to score, and a Queen's Park team who just didn't have the wherewithal to get into the game. I remember thinking a Queen's Park goal here would be really good, and they eventually did score, but had no material impact in the game. No impact in the game whatsoever, and then Arbroath got the 4th later on. So really strong performance from Arbroath, but equally, if Arbroath was driving down a road at 100 miles an hour with no cars on it, Queen's Park's been stuck in the M8 at rush hour. That's how bad a performance they were.
And seeing, because I was looking at Arbroath's squad, and I don't necessarily think that my opinion of them has changed since the summer, where I thought they had clearly the best part-time team in Scotland. But that still looks like a team to me that I wouldn't necessarily expect to thrive in the Championship. So do you think I was wrong in that, or is it that Colin Hamilton and David Gold are just getting a bit extra out of them, I suppose?
I think both of those statements are true. I think you've got a young management team there who are probably quite close in age to the players. I don't know if they see them more as like teammates than they do as a boss or a manager. I don't know how the dynamic works at the club, but I always liked the way that David Gold speaks, less so Colin Hamilton, and I was very disappointed when I saw who was doing Arbroath's post-match interview. In my notes here, I've got under Colin Hamilton's post-match interview, nothing revelatory here, which I think is probably the same for all of his post-match interviews. But you've got a good management team there, and I think it's when you look through the profile of the Arbroath squad, I think it's exactly what you would want from your team. You know, the age range of a lot of the players. You've got a couple of guys there who are the wrong side of 30, who are older than 30. Guys like Tam O'Brien, Ryan Dow, Ryan Flynn. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a perception that when you get to a certain age, you don't have anything to offer. Simply not the case with these guys. Guys who are just really fundamentally good football players, but guys who look after themselves, really, really good professionals, really set the standard. And I think that feeds all the way down through the team. So the younger players, guys like Taylor Stephen, who's on loan from St Johnstone, Finlay Marshall, who's come in, like Jack Wilkie, for instance, guys like that. There's a good profile right throughout that team. So at the extent where they were able to bring on like Pettifer, as he came on as a substitute, who can maybe add something different in the attack. Good profile, all good characters, and I think that's what makes Arbroath such a strong team at the moment.
Taylor Stevens an interesting one because I remember we used to really compliment him when he was on loan at Alloa in League One. Interested to see how he got on when he got to the first team at St Johnstone. Was quite disappointed that he seemed to get used as a right back. Went out on loan, which felt like it was the best thing for him. It sounds like he's doing really well. But obviously, you saw him in the flesh on Saturday. How did he get on?
I had a great game. He had a really good game up front alongside Gavin Riley. Where's number 9? But he's not like a proper centre forward. Riley was excellent in this match. Riley was probably second best player in the park behind Ryan Dow. But what Stephen was doing was anytime the ball went to Riley, and Riley, I remember actually seeing him, he was loaned to Stennis. I didn't actually appreciate how good a player he is, but see his back to goal play is really good. As soon as there's a long ball played up front, he'll watch where the ball's going. I know you asked me about Taylor Stephen and I'm answering the question about someone else, but he'll watch where the ball's going, then look at the defender and try to just basically get himself in front of the defender on the ball. And I think Stephen knows that when Riley goes up to get the ball, to just make sure you're in front of him to play it off one another. And it was Stephen, and that was a tactic that just being in around Gavin Riley was occupying the likes of Charlie Fox and Ewan Murray. You see that for the second goal where Dow plays the ball into him, and there Stephen's got the space there to open up and shoot, but that's because Riley is occupying those defenders. So yeah, played very well. A lot of the stuff though, we could talk really very nicely about Arbroath, but it has to be put in the context of how bad Queen's Park were. I talked about Riley. I thought the best player in the park, and the highlights borne this out, was Ryan Dow. Just excellent performance there. I mean, it was his ball in that led to the first goal. I think Jacob McIntyre gets the assist there.
Yep.
Kind of hit off him before falling Riley. But it's his ball into Taylor Stephen for the goal. The second goal, it's his sort of cross-come shot that's for the third goal. It's his cutback for Finlay Marshall for the fourth goal. But he was just excellent. He was up against Rocco Friel. And I think we spoke quite kindly about Rocco Friel when we talked about Queen's Park Dunfermline. Did not have a good game here. And I think that you've got Ryan Dow there, who's a very experienced player, played at a very good level throughout his career. I think it's only injuries that have why he's moved into part-time football. But just someone who was just head and shoulders above the boy, marking him. And I think at points he was like toying with him, and he was quite enjoying what he was doing as well. And it was really easy for him to find the space. And I think as well with Wilkie working alongside him, a lot of the time when Dow got the ball, Wilkie would just bomb forward. And I think that having someone like that, just even if you're not going to use him, you put a split second of doubt in the fullback's mind that he's either going to slip the boy in who's running off his shoulder, or he's going to come inside. That creates a space for yourself to do great things, and that's what Dow was able to do there. Just a really strong performance all the way through from him.
It's interesting that you mentioned in terms of Arbroath squad, the contrast in terms of the experienced players, how they perform really well, certainly on Saturday. and that probably invigorates maybe the younger players around them. Queen's Park probably don't have, they probably don't have that kind of core of experienced players, I suppose. But one person or one player I did think struggled on Saturday and has struggled for a while and is one of the more experienced players. I thought Callum Ferry looked really poor, maybe at fault for 2 of the goals.
Yeah, certainly we were standing, we'd a pretty good view of both. In fact, in the first half, certainly, in fact, we had a good view of all the goals. We'll come on and talk about just the experience at Gayfield, which was terrific, by the way. But for the first one, the ball gets played into Stephen, and Stephen's got a lot of time to turn and shoot, but it felt as though Ferry got to it, but it seemed he was able to get something on it, but not enough. And I just wonder if the ball was just hit so hard. I mean, it looked as though Stephen really melted it, that Ferry couldn't really do much about it. I don't think there's any dispute about the third goal, for instance. I was listening to the commentators saying that Dow's effort was intentional. You're not sending all the big laddies forward and shooting from there. That's not happening. It's a goalkeeping mistake. I thought the commentators maybe didn't want to criticise the goalkeeper. They didn't want to criticise Ferry. And it's funny, I wanted to eventually get the commentator, so maybe jump onto it now. You know how maybe when like a team is going through a difficult spell and they get rid of a manager and then they recruit a manager who is known for a completely different style as the manager they've just got rid of? Now, not that I'm saying that Arbroath got rid of their former commentator, but it feels like they went from Fermer Innes, who would talk about like what he got up to in nightclubs, then the next guy would just want to insert rhyming slang into every single thing he spoke about. And now this next person sounds like the most sensible person in the world. I mean, that's not a criticism of him. It's a very different style from what I'm used to when it comes to Arbroath. You say very different. I say far superior style to what we're used to from.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was just. It was. You're right. Just. I remember buying a stream. There was a period where I became a Queen of the South fan, which is like what I think there must have been like 5 games in a row where I paid money to watch Queen's Park. I saw James Maxwell more than I saw my own family during that period. But I remember buying a stream for Arbroath and listening to Fermer Innes and just thought, this is absolutely appalling. And what I really enjoyed about it, I think Queen of the South scored maybe 1, maybe 2 goals that were very offside, maybe possibly offside. And it was brilliant listening to him, because if you've had to listen to somebody slavering for ages, there's nothing you can do with it. You might as well listen to being miserable for ages as well. So I was quite glad with that. These commentators sound really good. I suppose that's just the professionalism of Arbroath. You just want sort of a better standard of commentator, and that's what you got there. I think these guys are just really good, far easier to listen to. And yes, I might dispute the fact that Dow's effort was intentional. I didn't think it was, but nevertheless, it's just I think they only might get to see it once. They'll probably look back and be like, I might have got that one wrong. But to go back to what you were saying about Ferry. It seems to be the common consensus, isn't it, that Callum Ferry has been off the boil for a couple of months now.
Since the game at Ibrox?
Yeah, just about to say
there's
that.
a massive drop-off since then.
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate, because I think he is still a very popular figure amongst the Queen's Park support. One of the very few experienced players that they do have in that team. But having read Pie and Bovril and reading what Queen's Park fans are saying, I think that the point is, when was the last time that Callum Ferry won us any points?
Yeah.
You know.
Sean Crichton, he certainly didn't offer any excuses afterwards. Said they were very much a kind of long way second best. But it's starting to feel like, or certainly watching it and kind of reading about it and listening about it, didn't feel like this was a bad day at the office. It kind of feels like they might be in a bit of bother, actually, maybe going forward.
When you saw the team sheet for Queen's Park, I remember going down there. I went with my girlfriend, and folks say, "Oh, you know how to treat a lady?" And yeah, I do. You take them to Arbroath versus Queen's Park up in Gayfield on a Saturday. I was saying to her, we just had a conversation in the car, and I said about Queen's Park, they've got a boy playing for them, and I was talking about Josh Fowler and just talking about his journey in football, because I think even if you're not particularly tuned into Queen's Park, a guy that's moved to the Gulf, to Australia, back to the Gulf, to the south side of Glasgow, that's an interesting career arc. So we were talking about him, and I said, he's a really good player. He doesn't need much to get a shot away. great penalty box player and so on. And actually been quite disappointed that he wasn't in the starting lineup.
Yep.
I think Shaughan Crichton must have been disappointed that he was in the starting lineup because they had nothing to hit, nothing up front. Seb Drozd was played as I'm going to say as the number 9, not his position. I think he's more of a sort of wide forward, a number 10 maybe, someone who's not going to lead the line, and especially someone who's not going to lead the line against Aaron Muirhead and Tam O'Brien. Yeah. It was an absolute stroll for them. I know that Tam O'Brien got himself in a wee bit of a faff for the Queen's Park's goal. Maybe could have done a wee bit better. I think it was Josiah Sawa that got the better of him. But Colin Hamilton did make a good point in his post-match interview where he said that he just gets the wrong side of him, and I think if O'Brien reacts, it's a penalty, it could be a red card and so on, so you let him go. And to be fair, Aidan McAdams was able to bail him out once, twice, just that third one broke to Mam Scott and he scored. But that was only the high point of Queen's Park's day. The midfield was completely overrun. I thought Ryan Flynn had a really good game for Queen's Park. Beg your pardon, had a really good game for Arbroath. Nothing fancy, but just does everything simple. And I think he's just always at the right place at the right time. And I think that he was a real factor in the fact that Queen's Park just couldn't get a foothold in the game. You had Dow on one side, you had like Stephen on the other, and that sort of attacking trident. Just guys who, and you had Finlay Marshall as well, just guys who were just like pretty much like almost playing in the final third the entire game. So Queen's Park just couldn't get forward at all. Yeah. Fieldson barely crossed the halfway line. Field barely crossed the halfway line either. And I think that Shaughan Crichton saying that they had to like Pignia tell wanting to rest him but having to play him. Yeah. It's something we've acknowledged for a while, is that Queen's Park's starting 11, it's a competitive starting 11, but as soon as you maybe take one, maybe two players out there, it's suddenly you don't have really any quality or any experience to speak of to go in and back them up. A lot of young laddies, young slight laddies in there. And that's certainly not the case at Arbroath. I mean, Arbroath could take off Gavin Riley and bring on Nikolai Todorov. Queen's Park just don't have that luxury. And they got that win against Ross County, and they have been eking out a couple of other results. And this was, I want to say as well, this was definitely the worst it's been under Shaughan Crichton. I mean, I think that when he says that it's one of the games that can get in the bin, I think he's absolutely right here. It could go either way for Queen's Park. They've got Airdrieonians coming up, massive game at the bottom of the table, and I think that's a good indicator as to what the direction the team are going in. Arbroath, Queen's Park, Airdrie, I think at the beginning of the season we expected there to be a mini league at the bottom of the table. Arbroath have now beaten Queen's Park twice. Yeah. They've beaten Airdrie, and I think that at the stage, that's them almost got double the points that Queen's Park have got. Don't want to get too carried away ourselves, but I can't really see Arbroath being in serious problems. I can see them finishing in 8th, but I don't think they'll really need to concern themselves with 9th or 10th.
You're damn starting to suspect that as well. And I think the concerning thing about Queen's Park is, I think as we mentioned before, the compliments about them is the fact that they have a small group of players, a small squad that will give absolutely everything for the cause and leave everything out there. And that's great, but I think that becomes a lot more difficult. See, in terms of like a defender throwing themselves at something, or like getting in the way of a block, like a determination to make a block. That's a lot easier when it's 0-0 or it's 1-1 or you're 1-0 up. But when you're a goal down after 8 minutes and then 2-0 down after half an hour, there's maybe less of a willingness to do something like that. So it feels like they have to start games strongly and remain in games for those for that kind of work rate and impetus to continue. So that would be a concern if the confidence starts to dip, I suppose. Aye,
and in that first half there was no let up, absolutely no let up from them. I mean, Gavin Riley, as you mentioned, was just relentless, and again, you just appreciate how good a player is. Remember when Nikolai Todorov was scoring goals, we think, maybe Todorov's the principal number 9. I think Riley is a better player. I think most people acknowledge that, and it's only, again, similar to Ryan Dow, it's only injuries that have stopped him from playing full-time football for longer. And I suppose he's at a stage of his career where he might want to think about what comes after football, so that's why he's just winding down slightly. But you've got someone like that, then you've got Marshall, and you've got just all across that front line, all guys who are super enthusiastic, and then on top of that, it helps that you score early. And it helps that you're playing against weaker opposition because everyone wants to get in the act. And then you've got everyone getting in that. And then you've just got Ryan Dow sorry, you've got Ryan Flynn, Aaron Muirhead and Tam O'Brien just all sitting back and just making things. If the front players lose the ball any minute, there's Ryan Flynn on top of you. And if Ryan Flynn loses the ball, there's the other two on top of you. And that, like I say, that first half, they just couldn't get the ball out of it. And that's credit to Arbroath for that.
And how did you? So was that I apologise, I we should ask you this up front. Was that the first time you've been at Gayfield?
Do you know something, Shaughan? The last time I was at Gayfield, it was the 5th of January 2019. You were with me there.
Oh, of course.
It
was just the way you said it. You talked about the experience of Gayfield. I was like, is that the first time he's been there?
But the last time being there, it was ourselves. We had it was our Terrace podcast hospitality away day. So we went to Arbroath and we're told to shush a lot of the time.
That's
during the post-match shocks. Not just us, by the way, just everyone was like, nearly there.
Because they were trying to sell a hot water bottle signed by the squad and so on. A sled. And I'm sure Andy Harrow bid on and successfully bid on a signed sleigh.
Yes, there was also, I think someone won a signed hot water bottle. So, I mean, the markup on these things is incredible. It feels like, when you saw like Omar Kader sign like a Fray Bentos pie, you're like, oh, that's a fun novelty. But then you see, no, we're just going to the pound shop and just buying like 20 quid's worth of stuff, sign it, and the markup on it is incredible.
It's also only a fun novelty if you don't win it. Because I think once you've won it, you realise, oh, geez, I'm lumbered with this and now have to get home on a replacement bus.
Carrying your signed Fray Bentos pie. Or if you want to laugh, just attach the sled to the back of the bus and just
as long as you're successfully bidding on the signed sledge in the dead of winter, it might come in handy.
So that was my first time to Gayfield since then. Now, Stennismuir shared a division with them last term, and I couldn't go to either of the games. The first one, I think, was away doing something for the first game, and the second game, that was Arbroath's title party. They needed to win that match to win the division. I didn't want to be a part of that, so I stayed away. Went to see Edinburgh City 2, Elgin City 0, of course. But for this one, I ask like semi-regularly to appear on the BBC Sport Scotland's sort of daily football podcast in the morning, and I've been asked to go on a couple of times with Ryan Flynn, and I think that Ryan Flynn and I actually work quite well together on it, and I think that he what I really like about him is, you'll know me, Shaughan, I'm a big nerd when it comes to football, and I think that you could, I hope that by listening to this podcast and listening to other stuff, there's a lot of preparation that goes on into it. You just don't want to pitch up and talk shite. And even when it comes to doing these BBC podcasts, even though they're 20 minutes long, when you get the itinerary through it, I'll spend the evening before and get up right early in the morning just to make sure I'm prepared for any questions they might ask. I think sometimes people don't do that. Sometimes I think people can just coast on it. Ryan Flynn doesn't do that though, so he's able, even though he's not played in League Two, I think they can ask him questions about the various teams and he's able to answer them quite competently. He's done his homework. He's watched the same things I have. He's watched Michael McIndoe's post-match interviews the same way I have. So I really like being on with him. Of all the people I've been paired with, I really like being on Ryan Flynn. And when we finished the podcast last week, I mentioned that I'm going to go to the game against Arbroath Queen's Park. Stennismuir were playing Motherwell B in the KDM Evolution Trophy. Not interested in that. So I mentioned that I was going to, and then after he sent me a message on Instagram saying, I'll sort you out with tickets for it. Class. So I was like, that's incredible. Very, very generous of you. Very, very generous. So I asked my girlfriend to come along on the Saturday. Interesting rub. Her local team is Queen's Park, and her dad in the 90s played for Arbroath for 3 seasons, which is pretty cool. So that's the way I build it, is like her derby for that. So don't say I'm not good to women here. Don't say I'm not good to women. So we went up to it and got parked quite just round the corner for the ground. And what I've liked about it, I don't know when the last time you were at Gayfield was, Shaughan, but see what I really like about it. See all that money that they made during the season when they were challenging to get into the Premiership. And I think the money when James Anderson donated to them during the COVID season, all that money's been put to good use. Yeah. What I would say the exterior of Gayfield looks like, it looks like a medical centre that was built in the last decade. And that's not to be dismissive. It's like you go there, the ticket gates, it's all modern ticket gates. Go into the reception, there's brand new offices that are built there. The club shop has been built. And when you go through, there's like a wall, with bricks that's got fans' names on it. And it looks like the money's really been spent well on making Gayfield just look really, really nice. And what I really liked about it, you're walking, looking at all the bricks of the people's names, and you look at their slabs with engravings on it. Just looks fantastic. It looks like it means a lot to a lot of people. That's what I liked about it so much. Is obviously there's a lot of people who are proud to support Arbroath and they want to show off their pride, and that's where they're giving money to the club, and it just looks fantastic. There's pictures of, you know, like title winning teams and promotion winning sides all around the place, and it just looks class. It looks class. But once you go around that, you're just in Gayfield, and it's the same as it was. Obviously, it's been spruced up. It's been spruced up, and there's, you know, you can't walk all the way around the ground. Now there's the bit that's segregated for away fans behind one of the goals. But I was just like, this just looks great. The pitch was a wee bit dry. The pitch looked fantastic. There was no wind, which was incredible. It was a nice sunny day, clouds scattered across the sky. I actually had to take my jacket off at points because it was so nice, and it was just busy. And probably a bit quiet, I'd say that in terms of the atmosphere. I was perhaps expecting a wee bit more. You get more atmosphere at Oakville View when Steny win a corner. You get about 10 people shouting, "Come on, Steny." There's no singing here. But we watched the first half. We can see ourselves in the highlights. So when Ryan Dow's taking his free kick for the third goal, we were in line with it. Mm-hmm. And then in the second half, we were able to walk round and join the fans just the other side, at the halfway line. They've got a bit where the commentary gantry is. We're able to go down there in a throng of fans there. And it was during that bit there when you're looking across at the main stand, it's just that there's so many sponsors. I know what I mean. I'm not talking like I sound like Donald Trump talking about Mar-a-Lago here, but what I mean by that is I think that when Arbroath were doing well, I think everyone who was like every business who was local to Arbroath or the wider area would have wanted to get in on that and wanted to give money to the club and have their signs around it. And I've just like, Gayfield looks class. That was the big takeaway from it. Arbroath looked like just quite comfortably the best part-time team in the country. You know, a lot of money's been spent on just making Gayfield good, and that's what's so good, because you could easily, when Arbroath were doing well, you could easily just spend money on like good players and taking them into position and not having when Gretna were going for it, like the amazing team of the pitch, but Radial Park was a total shithole. This is the opposite. It's the opposite. They've got shit players in the pitch, but Gayfield looks great.
Not quite the opposite.
Not quite. Good players in the pitch, guys that you want to get behind, but it's just a great place to go and watch football. It's modern, and it's got all the things that it needs to bring it up to speed with the requirements of the modern game, you know, new point of sales like pie stands, like modern toilets and all that. But it still retains what makes Gayfield, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't know his name, apologies, but I am sure that a couple of years ago, and maybe he's not there, but certainly there was a couple of seasons there where they had a commercial manager who might have been on the books at Dundee United at one point, but I think they have everybody at the club, as in supporters and people that have dealt with him, ultimately spoke really highly of him in terms of the job that he was doing, in terms ultimately working with the people that were coming through the door and working with local businesses to get them on side and get them sponsoring the club in whatever way that they could. And you're right, I think in terms of it's made a massive difference on the park, but also off the park as well. And also really cool that Ryan Flynn sorted you for tickets. And you're right, I've listened to you a few times on the podcast. I don't think everybody does their homework. I think you're right, but I did get the impression that Ryan Flynn does. So I agree. He'd done stuff with Robert at Hearts TV, and I think it was when Hearts played St Mirren, and I think when he came into the studio, I think that he had quite a fairly extensive list of notes about both clubs. So he'd obviously gone back and watched not just St Mirren, who I think he was playing for at the time. Obviously didn't need to make any notes. It's his teammates. It's your job. Yeah. But for Hearts, he'd obviously gone away and watched Hearts, so he's able to contribute into the discussion like that and not just wing it. So I think that's really impressive. Some people rest on the laurels, but I think for him, I think it's something that he could do. And I'd like to think that when they're pulling together the people to talk about the lower leagues, they see me and Ryan as quite a good combo in that regard.
Sounds like he's a nerd as well.
Maybe, but at least he can back up by the fact he's won stuff and he's actually he's actually legitimately a very good player who has made a career of being a football player. But it's great. It's just a really good a really good day. And it's easy to get behind the club when they're doing well, but you make hay when the sun shines. Put all these commercial deals in place so that when Arbroath were relegated, you can go down and come back up, and it's not an issue. You're not going to, I don't know, do a break-in, for instance, where you go up and then boom, completely
Cove Rangers, for example.
Cove Rangers,
when they got relegated for the Championship, it felt like they didn't really benefited from it. That's how it felt when Cove came down.
It just imagine Arbroath were relegated and just we have to demolish some of the terracing. We're demolishing the terracing behind the goals. We're going to store it in a warehouse somewhere on the other side of town.
As soon as the ball goes out, it just goes straight into the fun park and the bouncy castle behind the goals.
Aye, and they don't pay ball boys anymore, so the goalkeeper's got to clamber over the trampolines to go and fish it out. Aye, Arbroath Queen's Park, very, very good game. Well, briefly, Chris, we've been talking for ages, Shaughan. So we'll just briefly round up. Just one of the things when they're doing I think it's when Fowler's doing the park is we're running out of time. Who says who? So you've got all the time in the world. It's a podcast. You just keep on talking. You can keep on talking as much as you want. I think, Shaughan, that's what you and I are going to do. We're going to move to the division's other matches and we'll journey to Capello. Capello, Saturdays at 3. It is the only place I'd ever want to be. To examine the 1-1 draw between Greenock, Morton and Partick Thistle. And Shaughan, going by the highlights, this looked like an absolutely cracking game of football. Tommy Adeloy opened the scoring midway through the first half with a booming header. And just when Morton thought they'd secured their second win of the campaign, there was big Alex Samuel in the right place at the right time to equalise in the 93rd minute. Thistle are in second place with 18 points. Morton are in 6th with 11. What did you think of this one?
I mean, just fair play to Morton. I'd put something in the document for this week's show about the fact that Morton draw so many games. And I thought I'd kind of Googled what the record was for most amount of draws in a league season, and I was able to source it for England, which is obviously of no use whatsoever. A real struggle to get any info on Scottish records. Of course, I knew one man could help us. Craig Anderson messaged him on the Sunday night, I think when I was coming back for the Scotland game, and he was like, give me 5 minutes, I can get that information quite easily, which is quite an incredible sentence when you think about it. Can you tell me the most amount of draws in a league season? Yes, no worries, I have all of that at hand. So it's the record in a 36-game season is 18, and as it stands, Morton are on track to record 30 draws this season. It's just any time I see Morton either scoring a goal or conceding a goal, I'm like, that's totally irrelevant, because if they go 1-0 up, they will concede, as they did here, albeit I was very late. I was actually thinking they might win again, or if they go a goal down, I know fine well that they're going to restore parity at some point. In terms of the game, you're right, it looked really good. I thought both keepers had a really good game. I thought it was quite interesting that Doug Emery, when he was asked about it, he said that Partick Thistle had loads of the ball, but he didn't really feel that that Thistle troubled Morton. And then he went, but anytime they did, Storer had loads of good saves. I'm like, well, I don't know how many good saves they can have if it didn't trouble you. But regardless, I thought, because Thistle hit the post as well. So I think on the balance of play, Thistle maybe warranted, if there was going to be a winner, it should have been Thistle. But regardless, it looked like a good game. And Emery thought that at a point apiece was fine. No so sure. But regardless, it looked like a fun Saturday afternoon.
It did. I thought that the both goalkeepers were probably the best two players in the park. Going by the highlights, I think particularly James Storer in goals for Morton. He looks like he's been a really good signing. Actually, I think he might have been the best signing Morton have made so far since he's come on loan from Wolves.
Yeah, possibly. Although
he wasn't too clever against Raith Rovers.
No. And that said,
listen, that's what Barry Robson had been planning that for weeks. So,
in fairness, I thought Josh Clark had the best save.
The one where he tips over the bar.
Tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Yeah, absolutely.
I think my favourite bit in this game, though, is Tommy Adeloy's goal. I actually, when I was watching it, I was like, fucking hell, that's a brilliant goal. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, go and watch the highlights from Ton TV. It's a Morton have a corner kick. It gets Thistle cleared out, but only to the edge of the area. It goes to Nathan Shaw. And this is brilliant from Nathan Shaw. I know Nathan Shaw isn't everyone's cup of tea and can be a bit flaky, but the ball comes out to him. He drops the shoulder and drags the ball forward with his left foot and then clips it towards the back post with his right. And there's Adeloy, just the power that he manages to get in it. It's a super goal from its conception to its execution. Really, really well taken.
Yeah, see, I think you can maybe say the same thing about Partick Thistle's equaliser.
Loved it.
Because it was a really good... I think it was Stevie Lawless clips the ball in. Tony Watt does really well to pick out the substitute. Who
Alex
was it?
Samuel.
Alex Samuel. And it was a kind of diving header type finish. So that was you're right, it was 2 well-worked goals as well.
I really liked that. It was the goals from Watt's assist. It's the sort of goal that if I was Tony Watt, I'd be running away celebrating like it's me that scored it. I mean, I know that he's effectively putting on a plate for Alex Samuel to finish, although Samuel does have to do a bit of work but to convert it. Because Samuel's become quite a useful player for Thistle, actually, hasn't he? I think when he was signed, it was very much another body to come in and just bolster our attack. But I mean, that's a really important goal, and I think that he's become quite a useful option. Probably won't start many games. I think you're always going to go for the likes of Tony Watt or Logan Chalmers or an Aidan Fitzpatrick playing in that attacking trident, but a useful option off the bench. Yeah,
I wondered about him as well in terms of if he's maybe become a wee bit fitter. Like, I have always thought that Samuel was, I mean, let's be honest here, he has a fat arse. He always fills out his shorts. But there was a game I watched recently, it might have been just after he signed for Thistle, and he came in as a sub, and I said something, not very funny obviously, but I said something about, oh, geez, we'll wait till we see this guy's arse. And actually I was like, oh, it just seems quite normal. So I don't know if he's maybe worked on his fitness over the summer, but he certainly, I think he's still a player who's more concerned with winning fouls than, like, it feels like he'll maybe turn a player. You think to yourself, right, you can now get in here, you can get down the line, or you might be through, or you can set somebody up, and then he'll collapse, like trying to win a foul. I still think there's a bit of that element to him, but I do think he's maybe a wee bit fitter than what he has been for a while, and I think certainly scored a few more goals, and Thistle will be the beneficiaries of him suddenly becoming maybe a better player than I gave him credit for.
I think that sounds about right. And I think that Thistle are just doing pretty well at the moment. You know, I think that it's remarkable, you know, not to repeat points made in previous podcasts, but you come into this campaign with your budget being cut, you lose your best striker, you lose your midfield talisman who's been there for a number of years, you've signed a boy who was at Forfar Athletic the previous season, your manager wasn't too great at Ayr United, flopped at Brecon City, but Wilson's doing really, really well there. And I think that he's signed generally very well, and it feels like there's a good vibe around Partick Thistle. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just feels like the club are in a pretty good place. I think, like, for instance, like Oisin Smythe, that they've got on loan, they've got on loan from St Mirren. He looks like he's added something to the middle of the park as well. It just seems everything seems to be going well, and if they win their game in hand, they just go 3 points behind St Johnstone as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'd completely disregarded them as a team who could finish top 4 of the season, both before the season began and very much after that first game of the season, losing, I think it was 5-1 to St Johnstone. And even when Raith went up there to Firhill, or down there rather, and I watched 90 minutes in, I thought Raith were a wee bit unlucky to lose on the day, and I thought that Thistle were under the cosh for spells. I thought Raith done okay on the day, and I wasn't too sure about them. But any other time I've seen them this season, I've been really impressed by them. And as I said, over the piece, broadly speaking, on Saturday, I thought if they'd managed to sink that game 2-1, it would have been thoroughly deserved.
And as for Greenock Morton, listen Morton fans, for the couple that listen to this show, you might be worried, oh God, we're drawing so many games, the season's going nowhere. Listen, we're coming into the second third of the season, you're going to win loads of matches, you're going to fly up the table, and don't worry what happens in the final third of the season, just enjoy it for what it is. You're going to have a good time. And Shaughan, we'll finish by looking at the big dog derby between St Johnstone and Ross County at McDermott Park. 0-0. Not much happened in this match. I think the home side might have been the more enterprising of the two teams, but County, certainly going by Tony Docherty's interview, will have been delighted to have taken a point for this one.
Maybe it's just where Ross County are at this moment in time, and I know, like, when managers go into a new club and they're sitting low in the table, they don't they generally don't suddenly become even more expansive. They try and become more difficult to beat. But Tony Docherty talking about, but not necessarily delighted at keeping clean sheets, because managers generally are. But when he said, well, when you go to the league leaders and you manage to get a point, that's always a good result. And maybe that could be really important come the end of the season. And you're like, it just felt unusual for a Ross County manager to say that, I suppose.
I mean, see, if it was Dougie Emery saying that, you'd probably like, I can kind of get on board. But it's like, you've got a squad of about 40 players, mate. You're allowed to sign whoever you want. Come on, show a wee bit more ambition. And I think the disappointing thing for this one is just that they didn't show any ambition in this game. It seemed that they were very content to get out of the point. A lot of time wasting, a lot of buying fouls, slowing the game down, stopping St Johnstone from playing. And on top of that as well, it was a good time to take it on St Johnstone. The fact that Adama Sidibe was away on international duty, Uche Piezu on international duty, Stevie Mallon missing, and Josh McPake perhaps a little bit out of form at the moment. It seemed like it was a good chance to go and take them on. And they didn't. They ultimately stopped St Johnstone from scoring. They didn't really do much themselves, and I think Toby Stewart had quite a quiet game.
Yes, but then I would also say that Toby Stewart might have had the best save in the game. Ronan Hale, Ronan Hale had a chance.
That's a good point.
So he did have one good save, but actually, in fairness, Trevor Carson had a really good save. Maybe with his feet that I think was deflected, and he saved it with his feet. But I do think that Carson could be a very important signing for them, and I didn't think he would have been, because I as much as I don't think Ross Laidlaw is necessarily a good goalkeeper, I do think at championship level he's perfectly adequate, and I think there's probably bigger deficiencies in this squad than goalkeeper. However, the fact that he is now making key saves, and you saw it in the Ross County Raith Rovers game. He had an excellent save at 0-0. I can't remember
the Morton game as well. He made a save in that. It was actually jaw dropping how good it was.
And actually now there's 3 games in a row where Ross County have got, they've got 5 points out of that. So, and maybe it would have been a good few less if it hadn't been for Carson. So actually, you're maybe now starting to see the value of bringing him in. But they've become tougher to beat. It's maybe not necessarily what Ross County fans wanted to hear, but it's something to build on. I still think they're a wee bit away from top 4, and you can absolutely forget about winning the league, certainly.
I think top 4, I think they can finish top 4. I think when you see the teams that are going for it at the moment, I mean, they're only 6 points off the Rovers and Ayr United from those. So that's over the course of the season, very easy to make that up, particularly if they're, I suppose at this stage is with Docherty, make the side hard to beat. You've called it absolutely. Make the side hard to beat, make them difficult to play against. But there's a quality there that once you get those basics right, Ronan Hale, Jay Henderson, and so on. The fact there's only 2 attackers I can think of. I mean, all that quality. Ronan Hale.
Nicky Clark did start, but I certainly wouldn't be including him in that former category.
I still a strange signing. I wasn't sure what Don Cowie was thinking when he signed him. Nevertheless, there's too much quality in that team for them to be too far away from the end of the season. And on top of that as well, they've got the advantage when it comes to January. I think they'll be able to see more movement to an extent that even the likes of St Johnstone won't be able to match. And speaking of St Johnstone, Shaughan, that's 2 games now, 2 consecutive 0-0 draws. I mean, they've still yet to taste defeat this season. It's still been an excellent first quarter of the campaign for St Johnstone, but perhaps the concern is that they're finding things a wee bit more difficult. Teams are a wee bit more, are not, I wouldn't say, maybe sussing them out a wee bit, knowing what it takes to contain them and beat them. And while they're still difficult to score against, and I do think that the Diabate looks, my goodness, what a signing he's been for them. Maybe one of the best signs in the Championship so far this season. But they've got something like that back who's difficult to score against. But going forward, they're lacking that wee bit of fluency.
Yeah, to a degree, and I suppose you're now seeing why. Maybe there was some concerns over some of the players that they had in that forward line. So in terms of like Josh McPake, he started the season exceptionally well, but maybe now you're starting to see why he has spent the bulk of his season in the kind of lower divisions. Somebody like Jamie Gullen, who does well across all kind of forward positions at the top end of the park, but maybe you can see why he has struggled to kind of, I don't know, leave a stamp on the position that should be his. Like, I think he was more used as a striker in this one. I don't know if that suits him. Should he be a number 10? Should he be played out wide? He's good, but where should he play? Nobody really knows, and I still think we can't really quite figure it out at this moment in time. Kai Fotheringham started a game, again, a player who has done well at this level previously with Dundee United, but I think you can maybe see why, again, there's probably deficiencies around his game when it comes to maybe playing up a level. And again, on Saturday, it didn't look like he hasn't started his tenure at St Johnstone particularly well. And I know somebody like Sidibe, who was missing on international duty, hasn't scored too many goals, did do very well on international duty, but he is, even if he's not scoring goals for St Johnstone, he's still a kind of a focal point for that forward line that nobody else can really provide, I suppose.
Here's a shoot. Get James Wilson in from Hearts as part of the cooperation loans.
Yes, I mean, I suppose that would improve them. But again, they can't bring him in until January.
No, cooperation loans can move outside transfer windows.
Definitely. Is that definitely?
Yeah.
Okay, well then bring him in next week. He'll improve matters.
I think that's something that I think there's a shoot. I think that's something they should look to do. Wilson isn't getting much of a look in at Heart of Midlothian at the moment. Send him down to a team where he's going to play every week and watch him score goals. That might be a totally Yarda opinion. It's probably unlikely, but I think it's something that St Johnstone should look to explore. You know, they've got Adam Forrester on loan at right back through the cooperation agreement. Why not see if they can get James Wilson? And I think it would work well for both parties. And on top of that as well, because it's a cooperation loan, he can maybe play 3 games at St Johnstone, move back.
I tell you, I did enjoy Simo Valakari. I like listening to him. I don't always know what he's talking about, but I do enjoy listening to him. And he said it was the fact that they'd made changes to the back four. So I think Jack Baird had dropped out. And it was when he was talking about, he didn't mention anybody by name, but he obviously, presumably meant Jack Baird, and he was saying that it's perfectly understandable that players are angry at getting dropped and being really disappointed at being dropped. That's fine, totally understandable. But what he regards as important is how they react and how they behave after they've been dropped. And he talked about the fact that he has changed the squad at points, but even if they've dropped out, you wouldn't know that they're angry. And they was talking about the fact that Jack Baird was the first player on the park to be, complimenting his colleagues. So I thought that was quite a cool thing to mention afterwards. The other 5 minutes, I don't know if I understood that much what he was referring to, but regardless, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, I suppose that's been a good teammate, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
I remember just on that, I remember playing for the Pye and Bovril select team, and it must have been about 2008. We're playing a game against a team, I think it was Hibs.net B, so you could tell it was a real high stakes encounter. And we were I think we were 3-0 down at half time, and I'd come through from Glasgow to play in this match, and I got subbed off at half time, and I was fucking raging. And when the team went off for the second half, I said, I hope you get beat, as I was walking away. And as soon as the words left my mouth, I thought, you're a fucking wanker. What a horrible thing to say. And I remember the manager, Codfish, afterwards said, Craig, that doesn't happen again. I was like, you're absolutely right, mate. You're absolutely right. That was disgusting.
That's an example of being a poor teammate.
That's a very good example of being a poor teammate. I know who I'd much rather be in the trenches with. Jack Baird rather than Craig Gordon Telfer.
And then what was the full-time score?
I think we lost 4-1.
Oh, you must have been delighted.
Yes! Cheering every Hibs.net B goal. Yes! Shaughan, the big fixtures coming up. We'll take a wee preview at them on Friday night. Big match, Dunfermline Athletic versus the Rovers.
So we mentioned this the other day because we'd discussed Dunfermline. I must have mentioned it last week.
Yes.
And I said at that point that I think it'll be a terrible game of football, that Raith Rovers might sneak 1-0. I only partly still agree with that. I'll still say I think it will be a terrible game of football with almost nothing happening in either final third. But I think maybe Dunfermline will sneak it 1-0. Good stuff.
Oh, Dunfermline. I'm going for... Yeah. I suppose even a week off, and I think Neil Lennon's probably taking them all whitewater rafting or something like that to really bring them
very
together.
Unusual for the away team to win in this fixture. I think the last 6 games
have
went for 6 games have been won by the home team.
Okay. Well, excellent. I'll put the mortgage on Dunfermline Athletic then. So let's go to the games on Saturday. Arbroath versus St Johnstone.
I think Arbroath will give them a game because of the reasons that we've discussed already, I suppose. But I still think St Johnstone will have too much, and they've got players coming back from international duty. They'll make a difference up top. So St Johnstone to win maybe 2-0, something like that.
Do you know, that's exactly what I've got down here. I think it'll be quite similar to when they play each other the first time. Yeah. I think that there won't be much between the sides, but St Johnstone will just have that extra wee edge that gives them the win. Ayr United versus Greenock Morton.
It involves Greenock Morton, so probably 1-1.
That's exactly what I've got down here. Partick Thistle versus Ross County.
I've been far more impressed by Partick Thistle. I know they drew at the weekend. On the other day they maybe could have lost it, but they played just about the better team on Saturday. And I know Ross County have become tighter, but I don't see Ross County winning it. I will go for 1-0 Partick Thistle.
Well, this is where we differ, Shaughan. I've got a score draw here.
What are you basing that on?
Vibes. And then our final match, and I think this is by far and away the most interesting game in the division, perhaps one of the most interesting matches in the Edinburgh City versus Stranraer is a really interesting game. But this is actually similar in a way. Queen's Park versus Airdrieonians at Lesser Hampden.
Massive. I think if Airdrie lose this, they're in massive bother. That would put them 8 points behind Queen's Park. I don't think it'll be very good. I think it might be exciting. I think it might be tense. I wouldn't be surprised if Airdrie sneak it though. I'm going to go for 1-0 Airdrie. Actually, I just thought Queen's Park were so poor at the weekend. Airdrie don't normally get gubbed. They're normally just poor and not quite good enough. So I'll maybe, certainly if Josh Fowler doesn't play, I do fancy Airdrie to win.
That's a massive factor in whether or not Fowler plays, and if he plays, I think Queen's Park will win. If he's not playing, I can see this going. That's really putting my neck in the line here. I think it might be another draw.
That's fair enough.
That's fair enough. I saw something like Danny Lennon's doing hospitality for a Raith Rovers game.
Is that the case? I know he is doing. I know he's doing something tonight, but it's based on the fact that there's been a book written. We led in Bayern Munich.
That might be it.
By Stephen Lothar. So I have he gave me a copy last week actually because he interviewed me about it a couple of months ago rather than a couple of weeks ago. But no, they're doing a Q&A in the Waterstones down the high street, possibly right now actually, and Danny Lennon is involved. So it's not hospitality. He's just doing a Q&A in a bookshop.
I thought that must have been the case because he's not going to say, listen, I can't do the team talk today. I need to go and wave at people in hospitality at Starters Park. That makes a lot more sense. That's class. I hope the book's good, and I hope they've represented you well and you come across well in it.
Hopefully, yes. But Dan, I'm sure the event will be good. Dan Lennon we've been in his company. He was a good laugh.
He's brilliant. He just lights up the room. He genuinely does. He lights up the room. I remember he told a really funny joke at the end. I won't say it on air, but I'll remind you of it once we finish up. And Shaughan, that'll do us for the time being. We're off to record a Patreon podcast where we look at the fortunes of League 2 managers and rank them on a scale between 1 and 5. It's a scale that Shaughan and I have invented. And if you want to listen to it, you'll have to subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. Head over there now, and for as little as £2 per month, you can access some high caliber content. There's loads of great stuff in there. Stuff that is just dropped into my feed there. There's a Seasons from Hell feature. There's a In Defence of Neil Doncaster. There's tons of good stuff there. So do get on top of that. And of course, watch A View from the Terrace. It is on Friday. It's going to be on the iPlayer from noon, and it's going to be on the BBC Scotland channel at 10:30. So do watch it. It was great fun to record, and I think that I was very proud of that episode. I enjoyed working on it, and I think the people watching it will enjoy it as well.
Same, fingers crossed.
So we'll go away and do that. So if you're going to a game this weekend, whether it's in the Championship, League 1, League 2 or elsewhere, enjoy your football. But unlike Craig Gordon-Telfer, who's just been substituted at half-time of a Pie and Bovril Select game in Edinburgh, please do so respectfully. Thank you.